Hey everyone, my name is Chelsea. Welcome to Little Mountain Ranch. I'm really happy to have you here with Maple and I today. Good morning, Maple. It is a rather smoky day here today. Where'd that sun go? I don't know if you're able to see the orange sun up there. Northern BC and Alberta have forest fires burning right now, and yesterday the wind shifted and blew the smoke over into BC, and I've heard from a lot of people in the United States that have smoke from these fires as well. Yesterday it was actually so bad that we couldn't even be outside. Thankfully though, it seems to be clearing up a little bit today, and I just checked the weather forecast and we are supposed to have some rain. So I'm just heading down to my pool right now. I'm trying to get my pool all set up for my kids, and it's still a little bit murky. So I'm just gonna back flush the pump over here and give it a little bit of a sweep. Look at how yucky that water is. This will help the pump work way better. Now we just have it on rinse and the water is looking much clearer already. This is our second year with our pool and I'm still trying to figure out how to get it going and working all well, keeping the water clean, all of that. Maintaining a pool is kind of a bit of a pain, but my kids love it so much, so it's worth it. Have you guys ever had one of those days where pretty much everything goes wrong? I had one of those days the day before yesterday. I don't know if this little pool is going to stay on. There's a story about that little pool, which I'll tell you in just a second. So do you remember me talking about how I was painting my gates for my garden? I mentioned this, I think, in my last video. And I have this little temporary gate that blocks my garden entrance right now from the chickens and the ducks. So it turns out the night before the morning of the very bad day, I had forgotten to put the gate back over there. And my ducks, I have 2 ducks and we've had them for 5 years and this has never happened before, so it wasn't even on my radar as a risk, got into my garden and gobbled up a whole bunch of all those brassicas that we planted together. So broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, pretty much destroyed. Let me show you. Remember those beautiful mammoth red acre? Well, that's what's left of many of them. And the cauliflower are not much better. In fact, they are worse. As you can imagine, that was not the best way to start the day at 6:30 a.m., especially after all we already have woken up on the wrong side of the bed. And to be honest, the day just got worse from there. I ended up with a bear that got up near my beehives when I went to check them to add another super on, which is just one of those boxes because they had filled the ones that I had on them. One of my hives was knocked right off the foundation. Fortunately not knocked over because Maple chased the bear off. I'm only making an assumption it was a bear just because there's nothing else that we have around here that, number one, would be interested in getting in a beehive in the first place, but number two, would be strong enough to actually knock 140 pounds over like that. And when I saw that, I had a memory of Maple barking her head off the morning before. And I remember thinking, oh, I wonder what got into the yard. We actually don't have wildlife pressure on our property. We do have lots of bears and cougars and lynx and all of that in the surrounding forest. But in all of the years that we've lived here, we've never actually seen a bear on the property itself. Maple does a really good job of keeping everything back. However, I guess the honey was a little bit too enticing for this bear, and it's spring and there's not a lot of food out for them yet. Well, good morning, Nala. This is Nala. Oh, are you purring already? Anyway, so that was thing 2. And then Dan and I installed our irrigation system down in the high tunnel, and I'll take you down there and catch you up on what happened with that. So needless to say, the reason that I have this little pool here is to go put in my chicken coop because my ducks normally free range during the summertime, and we have an area over by the tap that always fills up with water when I water, and that's what they swim in and play in. But they don't have that now because they're going to be in the chicken coop for at least another couple days until I get those gates permanently set up. I'm not going to risk that again. Ducks can cause huge damage, way worse than chickens, especially when it comes to baby tender plants like lettuce, spinach, broccoli, cauliflower, anything like that. They love it. There we go. There's the two little troublemakers right there. The two ducks that we have are purely for our enjoyment, just because they're so sweet and they just look so adorable waddling around the farm, and they actually bring us a lot of joy. We eat their eggs as well, but mostly they're just pets. And like I said, we've had these ducks for just about 5 years now and have never had an issue with them. So we'll keep them penned in here, they'll have their pool, and then we'll let them out as soon as we get those gates fixed. You guys have got to see the bunnies. They are just at my favorite stage of bunnyhood. Oh my gosh. I love that this batch are all different colors. Hi guys, good morning. Good morning. Good morning, little one. Isn't that just the sweetest thing that you ever saw? Oh look, it's eating some grass. Is that yummy, little one? And this little one here, this one is the kid's favorite. Hello, Nala. How are you? Hello. There we go, all four of them. This one is the biggest and definitely the most robust. This little guy's pretty cute too. I could just sit and watch these cute little babies. Look at them. Oh. Well, that's a nice way to start the day, isn't it? Munching on grass. Yesterday I decided to just take it easy and went down to the plant nursery in the afternoon, bought some beautiful seedlings to replace the ones that I lost, and just regroup, which I did. I'm feeling much better today. Going to bring all of these down to the garden. Today is actually not a terrible day to plant because it is a little bit overcast, and with all of the smoke, we don't have a lot of really strong sunlight today. Usually when you plant out seedlings, you want to do it on a day like today or in the evening. A day where you know you're going to get rain the next day is perfect. Let's go down to the high tunnel and I'll show you what we did. So we strung out all of the drip tape along here, and I'll show you the brand that we use because a lot of you asked about that. And it's Netafim. So this is what it looks like, and then it has these little spots here. This is where the water drips out of, and they're designed in such a way that the soil and dirt can't get in from this way. And that's good because any soil or dirt or anything that gets into these lines plugs them up almost instantly. This is a Rain Fresh whole house filter, so it's a pretty good size filter. But do you remember me talking about why we needed this? And it's because we have spring water, and our spring water has a lot of silt in it. So we have a filtration system for our house to keep the silt out of the house water. But we don't have anything on our water hydrants outside, which is perfectly fine because silt doesn't damage gardens or grass or anything at all. In fact, it's actually beneficial because there's nutrients in it. However, it's not beneficial at all when it comes to drip irrigation. In fact, it's the worst possible thing for it. And so our hope was that we could put this in and it would be able to filter out those little particulates. And it did a really great job for about 2 hours. And then it completely plugged that filter solid. So we suspected this might happen, but Dan was really hopeful that this would be sufficient enough and that we would only have to change that filter out every so often. So this is what the actual filter looks like that's inside of that canister over there. What we're going to have to do, because this drip irrigation is so wonderful, for the 2 hours that it worked, it just absolutely thrilled me because it gives everything such a nice deep water, and I don't have to stand out here for over an hour and water all my seedlings. So Dan is actually on his way right now back to the irrigation place to see if there are some filters that we can add that would come, that we would melt on the wall here, that would come before the fine filter, that would have like baskets in them or something similar to a pool strainer at different levels of fineness that I could actually just pull out and rinse off periodically as they needed or as needed. And then the larger particulates would get filtered out before it hit the fine filter over here. We are not willing to give up on this dream of drip irrigation in our high tunnel. And in fact, Dan said if we can get this to work, he would really like to put it up in my big crop garden so that I don't have to water up there anymore. Drip irrigation is so localized, and I can already see how it would actually be super beneficial when it comes to weeds, because you're not watering your entire garden, you're just watering the areas where the plants are. And we're quite reliant upon watering here because we don't get a lot of precipitation in the summertime. So I honestly think having drip irrigation, not only would it save me a lot of time, but it would cut down a lot on weeds that we're growing in other areas, except for right around the plants, which is relatively easy to stay on top of. We will definitely keep you updated with this project. And once we're at the point of actually being successful with it, which we are determined to be, we'll let you know what we did. I'll show you some of the other things that we have done in the garden since you were here with us last. Hello, Skittles. This beautiful girl here. Hello, sweetie. Hello, honey. This is Skittles. Skittles is my garden cat. She absolutely loves being in the garden. She spends a lot of time over here in the forest garden catching mice for me. I think she caught 6 mice in one morning, which is absolutely fantastic. And she's a sweet girl too. The little onions that I planted are actually doing all right. The garlic looks fantastic, but look at all these weeds in here. So my plan later today is to bring my stirrup hoe. I'll show you what a stirrup hoe looks like. It's my favorite, well, that and my hori knife are my favorite gardening tools. This right here is a stirrup hoe because it looks like a stirrup for horseback riding, and it works like this. So you just drag it along the ground and it cuts off the tops of all of the weeds. Makes it really easy to weed. I keep the stirrup hoe in mind when I'm planting, so that it's easy to get in between all my plants. Once the dew's off the ground, I am going to do a whole bunch of mowing. As you can see, the forest garden is pretty overgrown over there. So I am going to do mowing, and then I will use those grass clippings right on top of the soil for my garlic rows and use that to suppress the weeds and also to retain moisture as well. And I'm using the grass clippings just fresh. You don't have to really worry about the decomposition of grass clippings pulling nitrogen from your soil, as long as you're not stirring it actually into the soil. If you're using it to top dress, it's perfectly fine. It's one of my favorite mulches actually. One of the other things that I did is I started a row of carrots, and they're just covered in these feed bags to keep the soil moist. When you are planting carrots, the ground needs to stay actually quite damp during the entire germination process because they're such a tiny little seed and they're pretty much sitting on the top of the soil with just a little bit of soil covering them. They dry out really fast, and if they do, of course, it kills those tiny little seedlings. So I usually keep them covered when I'm germinating them. And the nice thing about these feed bags is the water can go right through. I will be doing my main carrots up there in the crop garden. This is just an early seeding of carrots so that we can have some to snack on by midsummer, just some little ones. So this was the other row down here that the ducks got to. You can see lots of munched on broccoli. So these ones were all broccoli. Down here, mostly broccoli, a little bit of cauliflower. There's a few that I think will probably come back that I'll leave in the ground, but I'll replant most of these. The whole garden now is all composted, and that entire pile down there, that big pile that we had, is just about entirely gone. So I did start some corn about 5 days ago now in the little greenhouse over here. And as you can see, it's already coming up. So these ones here, these ones are from Seeds for Generations, and they are Painted Mountain. Isn't that beautiful? I did some glass gem. I did some bodacious sweet corn. Oh yes, glass gem from High Mowing. So as you can see, I have not started very many, and I actually decided that I'm not going to bother doing a lot of corn. Corn is one of those things here that I've tried over the last 4 years. Last year was a really good corn year, but previous years are kind of hit and miss, and it's a lot of work and it takes up a lot of space in the garden. And we have a farm a little bit, there is actually a U-pick corn farm that's not far from here, about an hour or so away, and they grow amazing sweet corn down there. And we went there not last year but the year before and got all of our corn, picked it all from them, and they have really good prices usually. So I decided to support them instead of trying to grow a ton of my own corn. However, I really did want to play around with some colored corn. If I could grow some colored corn up here, that would be absolutely amazing. Corn is one of those plants that definitely prefer to be directly sown into the soil rather than planted in containers like this and then transplanted out into the garden. They just don't love it, and they tend to go into transplant shock. However, I did it last year and it worked really, really, really well. I was just quite gentle when I was taking them out of the cells. I waited until they got about 6 inches tall before I transplanted them. And last year, like I said, it was the best corn year that we have ever had. So if you live in a short season and you want to experiment with something like a rainbow popcorn like this, then I would highly recommend doing it this way. I won't be putting these out into the garden until all threat of frost has passed, which it won't be for another couple of weeks. I was just checking the weather forecast, and our temperatures are starting to come back down again to a little bit more normal. So in the low 20s, so I think between 20 and 24 all next week, and the nighttime temperatures dipping down into the 6-7 degrees Celsius range, which is still okay. We're still not going to see frost. I kind of feel like maybe our frost days are behind us, which would be incredible since last year we had frost mid-June. That was also unusual, but in the opposite direction of unusual compared to this year, which has been so warm. If I decide, which I haven't yet, to plant out my squash and my cucumbers, I will put row covers over those and used frost blankets at night, just because I don't want to risk losing them. Last year I lost almost all of them to that unusual June frost, which really did come out of the blue. But I don't want to risk that again, because if you've been here for any length of time, then you know how much I adore squash. I adore everything about squash, growing it, harvesting it, and eating it. I just love it. All right, now let's decide here what we're going to do. I think what we'll do is we'll go through, and anywhere where it looks like these little tiny seedlings that got gobbled on by the ducks are going to survive, we'll leave those in the ground. For these little seedlings that literally got plucked right out of the ground, we'll replant those. I am super grateful because I have a couple of the mammoth red acre cabbage left that I didn't plant because I had so many of them, I didn't need them. But now, because so many of them got demolished by the ducks, I have a couple to plant, and that makes me really happy because these seeds were actually gifted to me by one of you, and I really wanted to try them. So I'm going to put those in the ground, and it does look like a couple of them have enough leaves left on them that they probably will grow. I did plant this cute old wheelbarrow. This was actually here when we came here, and I've been wanting to plant it for the last 8 years and just never got around to it. So I dragged it down here and filled it full of some wave petunias at the front here, some sweet alyssum, and then some beautiful geraniums in the back. And that's gonna look so beautiful come summertime. I was talking about this over on Instagram. I post on Instagram just about daily, just sharing what we're up to around here. They have something over there called stories, which are just little short video clips. And I was talking with everybody about how And I was telling everyone how grateful I am to have had the ability to be able to go replace all of these seedlings that got destroyed. There's no question about it. I was really bummed, and all of the work that went into starting all these seedlings, nurturing them all the way through to the point of planting them in the garden, the loss of that time and all of that effort and that whole thing was definitely discouraging to me. But I was still really grateful that I had the ability to replace them. And even if I couldn't have replaced them, I still could have gone to the grocery store and bought these vegetables. And I'm thankful for that, because I was thinking back to the people that had originally homesteaded this property. If they had had a loss like this, it would have been really catastrophic for them, because they wouldn't have been able to as easily replace it as I can. I was also talking about how I have come to a place in my life where I can hold two feelings at once. And whereas before, when I was younger, if I had a bad day like that, it would completely throw off my entire day, and maybe for days and days afterwards. And if anything good happened, it would be overshadowed by the bad. And now I'm at a point where I can hold both of the feelings of feeling the discouragement about the loss of something like these plants, for instance, and then also be able to enjoy things that are good in my life at the same time. And that has had such a huge impact on my mental health. I cannot tell you. I'm very grateful. I don't know if it's just getting older or what it is, but I'm grateful for it, because I used to be someone that would become very distraught when difficult and challenging things would happen. And sometimes it could affect me for a really long time, or throw me into a depression even. So I'm pretty grateful to be at this state of life, I'll tell you that. All right, so these ones are called Snow Crown, and it's a new one to me. Definitely healthier looking than mine were. Well, that looks like a very odd looking row with some nibbled on plants and some large ones, but I wanted to give the nibbled on ones that still had a few leaves left a chance, and we'll see how it goes. It is heading on to chore time now. It's around 7 a.m. So I'm going to head back up to the house, get my hands washed, and head out to do all the rest of the morning chores that need to be done. And then once we go back into the house, we're going to make some dairy products, because I have, I think, around 6 gallons of milk to process this morning. So we'll head up to the house, grab all the milking gear, do our morning chores, and then we're going to go back inside. And I have, I think, around 6 gallons of milk that I need to process into something. I haven't decided into what yet. I forgot something. I just checked my to-do list for today, and I need to bring my potatoes up out of the root cellar. I should have done this 2 weeks ago. And I have to chit them, which means to just give them a little bit of light so that they start to grow a little bit. You can put them in the ground when they're not chitted. It just takes them longer to grow. Whoa! It gives them a bit of a head start to allow them to chit. I have planted them where I haven't done that before, and it just takes them a bit longer to go. But since I am planning on planting my potatoes out probably next week, I could do it now, but I may as well give them a little bit of a head start. So we'll go down to the root cellar once I'm done milking and grab all the potatoes. This is the first year where I will be doing all of my own seed potatoes, and I'm excited to see how it goes. Yep. That's a girl. Good girl. Good girl.
So confused.
you open that up? Okay. So the milk from today, the nice warm stuff that I just brought up, I'm going to turn that into quark, and I will show you once we get in there. But right now we're going to head down to the root cellar and grab all of our potatoes. Did I tell you guys I'm going to paint this door red to match the garden gate? Dan just sent me a picture of the kind of red that I want. It's just like a barn red color, so he's going to grab that for me, and hopefully we'll get these gates painted and put up this afternoon. It is time to bring up seed potatoes. I'm so happy with the way the root cellar did this year and the amount of potatoes that I grew, because I have enough for all of my seed potatoes this year. These are some beets that I'm going to bring up to the house and make some roasted beets to go with dinner tonight. And then I still have enough potatoes here to last us another couple of months until we have potatoes to harvest out of the garden. And this is the first time that I have ever been this successful at having things last in the root cellar, but also being able to start all of my own potatoes from my own seed potatoes this year. And that is a really good feeling. Whew, that was hard getting that back up here. All right, we are back in the house. I already got the quark over here. Actually, I'll bring you to it because I don't want to move it around because I just added the rennet. I added buttermilk culture to both of these, and then I added a quarter of a tablet of rennet to each one, diluted in a little bit of water. And now I will leave these to sit for 24 hours, and then I'll strain them for about 6 hours, and then they'll be done. And they are delicious. Quark is a European cheese, really soft cheese, very similar to a yogurt. I compare it to a combination between a yogurt and a cream cheese. It's absolutely my favorite. I much prefer it to yogurt. So that's sitting over there, and that'll be ready to go tomorrow. I have a big pot here that I'm going to put a gallon of milk in, and I'm going to pasteurize it for yogurt. I am not a huge fan of unpasteurized yogurt. You can absolutely make unpasteurized yogurt, but I just find that the consistency of it isn't awesome. The other thing that I decided to do is I'm going to skim off, I already skimmed the cream off that one. I'm going to skim off the cream off of these jugs that I have here and turn that into whipped cream for something yummy later. And then I'm going to freeze dry this milk for those periods of time in which we don't have milk. I'm hoping that's not going to happen. This last winter was the longest stretch we've ever had where we didn't have milk. I think it was 3 months where we had to buy milk, and that was not great. This year, I don't think that will happen because we have a cow, 2 cows calving in the next couple months, so that will bring us all the way till January, and then we have another cow calving in January. So I think we'll be okay, but still, I don't mind having a backup. So we'll skim off all of this. First, I need a jar. I would love to have an electric cream separator one day, but this works just fine. So I always wait about 24 hours before I try to skim, just because it gets nice and thick then. Fat does not freeze dry well at all, so I always try to remove as much of the cream off of the milk as possible before I freeze dry it. And then for doing the milk, I just pour it in from these jugs right into the trays of the freeze dryer because it's really hard to move liquid without sloshing it everywhere, especially in shallow trays. Did I tell you that we found a drywaller? So we have been trying to find somebody to come and do all the mudding and the taping in the basement, and we actually found one, and I am so excited. 2 more weeks and the basement will be to the point where I can get down there and start doing some work. So I'll get it all painted, and then we have flooring. We got to click together, what is it called? Engineered plank flooring, I think it's called, but it's waterproof, which was really important for the basement, just because there is like a slight risk of flooding down there. So we wanted to make sure that we had flooring that could both withstand the amount of use that our flooring gets, but also handle water if that happened. And then the rest of this we'll put down in the freeze dryer. I just have the freeze dryer cooling down there, and then we'll bring this down and get that going. I also have a bunch of eggs that I need to do over here that I need to get into the freeze dryer as well. While the freeze dryer is cooling down, I'm going to get our quinoa. So I'm going to be making a quinoa salad for lunch today with all kinds of veggies in it. And you cook quinoa the same way that you cook rice. So 1 cup of quinoa to 2 cups of water, or in this case, I'm going to use some broth to give it some extra flavor. And I'm going to do 5 cups of quinoa to 10 cups of water or broth. Then we'll set this on the stove on high. Once it comes to a boil, we'll turn it down and simmer it for around 15 minutes, or until the quinoa is nice and soft. So we have our quinoa cooking. We're going to chop some broccoli and some peppers, a bunch of tomatoes up to add into that. It calls for cucumber too, but I don't have any cucumber. So for our vinaigrette, well, hello, honey. You're sneaking by. So a total change of plans, at least for the vinaigrette. I'm going to make a different kind of vinaigrette because this one calls for lemons. Lemon juice. I don't have lemon juice or fresh lemons right now. So I am going to do something with a balsamic vinegar instead, and olive oil. This is very similar to the pasta salad that we made together a couple of days ago. As far as the base ingredients for it, I am going to add some cubed cheddar cheese to this as well, instead of the feta that we used for the pasta salad. So we'll do, I don't know, a cup and a bit of olive oil and around a 1/4 cup or so of balsamic vinegar. This is just about the last of my garlic from last year. I'm just gonna put a lid on our quinoa. Are you able to see the potatoes over there? So I've just closed my curtain so they're not getting direct sunlight, so it's nice filtered light. And I'm just going to leave those sitting there until they start to sprout a little bit. Hopefully that won't take too terribly long. And then we'll get those planted together sometime next week. We have our finely minced garlic that we're going to add into our dressing. So we're gonna add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper to our vinaigrette. Little shake, and then I'll pop that in the fridge and we'll pull that out at lunchtime. My poor freeze dryer room is still being used as a workspace for all the renovations that we have going on. What I'm gonna do is pull these out a little bit and then pour my milk right into the trays. Okay, so now what we're gonna do, we're going to get all of our veggies chopped now. And then we'll put this all together once the quinoa cools down. I'm just gonna chop up some cubes of cheddar cheese. So we have our bowl of quinoa here. I'm just gonna give my hands a wash because I'm going to be stirring this up with my hands. Our veggies in here. And our cheese cubes. That's good. All right, my friends, that is it for us today. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.